Hi, everybody. Here we are again with Where Are We Now? This is a weekly webinar that Workbook puts together with Workbook Radio has been doing with Dear Art Producer on a weekly basis to keep us all connected, keep us all informed, keep us all a little more sane. That's really, our agenda. And, Heather brought us this idea of, gosh, it was 5 weeks ago now. Feels like yesterday and also 3 years ago. So anyways, we're planning to continue them as a series. So hoping everyone will continue to tune in. And so that's that. I want to introduce our panel. Karin Onsager Birch, Chief Creative Officer of FCB West. Karin joined FCB West as Chief Creative Officer in 2015 as part of a team that has completely rebuilt that office in 3 years, culminating with the creation of what became one of YouTube's top 10 most viewed ads in 2017, Wins at Cannes, and The One Show, D&AD, and the top engagement score in the FCB network. Previously, Karin oversaw the pan-European Ford account for Blue Hive Ogilvy as ECD, and before that, she spent 16 years at Ogilvy Silverstein and Partners, creating award-winning work for many iconic brands, including Kayak, Hyundai, Nike, Porsche, Haagen-Dazs, eBay, Nintendo. I'm so sorry. I just get nervous and I can speak better than this. I just want everyone to know that. Then there's Justin Hooper. Justin Hooper is the founder and CCO of Undeniable and a longtime friend of mine. I just love that you're here today, Justin, and that you always answer when I call you. With a combined 20 years of agency and client-side experience, Justin has worked at 72 & Sunny, Ogilvy and Mather, and 3 years ago started his own shop, Undeniable, headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Through the years, he's created campaigns for StubHub, Netflix, Google, Carl's Jr., Truth, Activism, Rainier Beer, Sci-Fi, Totino's, I know that's not right, Motorola, Miller Lite, Cisco Systems, and Jaguar, and has earned recognition from Cannes Lions, Webbies, One Show, Effie's, Clio's, and was named Nice Modernist by Dwell magazine. In his spare time, he is overly passionate about his family, cooking cocktails, wine, painting, and sanitizing groceries before they enter his house, and photography. Margaret Johnson has been named one of the industry top chief executive officers by Forbes, Business Insider, Adweek, Campaign, and The Drum, as well as Executive of the Year by Advertising Age. Margaret's teams have been behind some of advertising's most talked about work, including bringing back ET for Comcast, Doritos brand list, and blockbuster Super Bowl hits such as the Cool Ranch Doritos dance-off between Lil Nas and Sam Elliott, Cheetos Can't Touch This, starring MC Hammer, Pepsi's More Than Okay, and the rap battle between Doritos Blaze and MTN Do Ice, starring Peter Dinklage and Morgan Freeman. She also created innovative experiences such as the Cheeto Museum's Lesson in Herstory, and augmented reality app that rewrites history to include historical women figures. The Deep Flake Experience, Dolly Lives, Doritos Rainbows, and Haagen-Dazs HD Loves HB campaign. I think I actually made that one all right. But
you nailed it.
All right. Woohoo. Okay, so Tommy Means is the co-founder and chief creative officer at Mechanism, co-founder of Apollo 51. Tommy Means is the founding partner and chief creative officer and independent creative for Mechanism, which is an independent creative shop with offices in San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and Seattle. He is also co-founder of Apollo 51, a network for creative agencies committed to increasing diversity and inclusion in the advertising industry. Yay, you. And then last but not least, Heather Elder, who has really become a nice friend for me, and I'm super proud of that. She's been an agent for 20 years. She hosts Your Art Producer podcast, writes a blog about the industry, and hosts a site for freelance art producers. Mostly though, she's always thinking ahead, and what better time to do that than now. Thank you so much for being here, Heather.
I like being your friend too, Heidi.
Aw. Now you're just hitting on me. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so me, I'm Heidi Governman. I've been at Workbook for 6 years now. Before that, I was at APA LA, which is a nonprofit photography organization. I get pleasure from being a supportive force in the universe, but specifically in this business. And I love helping my clients and commercial artists get the exposure that they're looking for. And I love to support them. And that really suits my personality perfectly. Their successes are my successes. So I also like karate, karaoke, lilacs, watching my kids play anything. My husband of 32 years, potatoes, my Christmas tree, and my enormously big dog, Goose. Although he's still a puppy, he's 75 pounds. So that's that. And so on with the show. I'd love to start off with Margaret, if you would just jump into this for me first. What are brands asking? Okay, how are agencies helping their clients during this time?
I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do as an agency is, continue to make things. And the challenge there is just how to make things. So we've been doing a ton of campaigns. We just did one for Panera where we actually had the drivers who are delivering food to customers shoot themselves in their cars, and then they would text us their takes, and then we would offer up feedback over text. So we're just getting kind of creative and crafty with the way we're making things. We're pretty lucky because we have a pretty robust in-house team that can, edit, we can do color, we can do sound, and all that works pretty seamlessly. So we've been lucky that we've been able to do a lot of that kind of stuff from home.
Did your clients ask you to do that, or did you go to them with that idea?
We went to them with that particular idea. I think we're trying our best to be proactive and just throw ideas out that we know that we can actually, pull off from home. They wanted to do something for delivery, but I don't think that they thought that we could do something maybe that ambitious.
Karin, would you weigh in on that too?
It's exactly the same thing. I mean, I think that at first what we saw was our clients panicking, and there's a sense of sort of worry, hunker down. Are we going to be able to do anything? The agency reassuring them, actually, there's a lot you can do in social distancing production. There's a lot of things we can do. Like to Margaret's point, we can be creative and crafty about how we do it. And then now I think it's a matter of helping them understand what is the right message in this time, maybe slow down with what they would normally do, and do something that's more empathetic and more appropriate for what we're going through. And then finding ways to produce that, quickly, because also the conversation's changing so quickly. An idea you might have now is completely outdated 2 weeks ago because things have totally changed. And so I think it's all about being nimble and proactive.
I love that word, nimble. Justin, could you weigh in on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're as boutique gets, so we're pretty small. But of the clients we have right now, there were 5 projects that were going on, and 3 of them we've now shifted to go from, what would be a live action shoot to like animation or claymation or stop motion. So that's kind of been our one kind of way we've tried to solve that problem. But it is about being nimble and just kind of restarting, but having a good attitude about it, figuring out, the new creative box we've got to work in and solving for that.
So leaning into animation and illustration to a big degree.
Yeah, we've done that with 3 of them. 2 of them we were able to kind of produce here in-house, but the other 3 we couldn't do.
Tommy, can you talk to that as well? I think we mentioned that yesterday.
Sure. I think what I kind of see us going through is we've kind of transformed from being an advertising agency more to a communication partner. And I think helping our clients transform how they're relevant right now without coming across as being opportunistic. And there's definitely a fine line with regards to that tone. We do have a lot of clients coming to us that want to do acts as opposed to ads, and I think coming across in the marketplace as more utilitarian. So we have we've got a couple of interesting brands right now. Method Soap is one of our clients, and they literally cannot make their soap fast enough, and they're just like, let's not advertise. Let's just focus on getting our product out the door. We also have a toilet paper brand, ironically enough, Quilted Northern, who is in the same position. They're just so focused on getting their product out to where it's needed most, and so we want the communication to reflect that. And in financial services, we have Charles Schwab, and that's really kind of transforming their brand and their messaging to being a partner that has the back of investors, and changing the tonality to be just that, to be that of an empathetic partner. And the production is it really varies. It's, you know, a little bit of animation, a lot of it is editing stock photography. We've done a lot of motion graphics, and I think the same as Goodby, we've had an in-house production studio for about 20 years, and it's sort of a combination of our in-house studio with some partners as well. But I want to say that we're in production for, you know, every brand that we have.
Do you guys find that your clients were on board pretty quickly with the idea of messaging, or did you kind of have to course correct them, or did you have to kind of get them back on track because they were so nervous if they even should be advertising at the moment?
Sure, I think it was there was definitely some hesitation, and again, it's you have to nudge your client's brand positioning and their purpose to, I think what Karen said, to one of either empathy or utility. And I think the hesitation, if there was any at all, just came from really a little bit of a fear of again, not coming across as being opportunistic or trying to take advantage of the situation that we were in. And again, you know, we have a lot of clients that are really, really doing well in this environment. And so it was sort of a combination of, maybe we shouldn't be out there talking because our business is doing really well, or we transform our brand positioning, our brand purpose to be that of we're here to help. And so there was a little bit of fear, but I think it's probably a lot more detrimental to be silent during a time like this. And I don't think we have any brands that have gone in that direction.
Margaret, can you weigh in on that too?
I was just gonna say, I think like in a funny way, it's like brought us a lot closer to our clients, because in a lot of cases we were already kind of in production on, you know, work, and it just didn't seem relevant now that that we're all at home. And so just being supportive and giving them the support that they need and encourage them to switch gears and you know, create something else to put out into the world is a good idea, even though it's a different plan than we all initially had before this happened. So we're doing a lot of that.
Same. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. And I was just about to say to Justin the same thing, but I feel like he's nodding at me.
Pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close. I think we have one client that we consult with in Los Angeles. They're like a health and beauty company, and they essentially, they on their own figured out like, hey, let's figure out how to transform our production into like building, you know, personal protection devices essentially.
Wow.
And it was great. It was a great idea. And they came to us, they said, hey, we're going to do this, and here's how we want to talk about it. And we're like, and our big conversation with them was about, well, let's do it, but not talk about it. And you will get talked about for doing it, but like, that's not the reason to do it. And so I think they have a team internally that was really excited about the idea of like broadcasting this news to the world. And we're like, you know, you don't need to broadcast. And it turns out they didn't broadcast it, and it really did well for them. So.
That's important that they had you.
Well,
Yeah, no, I mean, no, but it changed the direction of something. That's a great story. Okay, so I wanted to ask, like, a little bit more nitty gritty, are brands asking for remote shoots right now? I know that, Karin, you were mentioning how you solved that problem, but are there remote shoots going on for different products and things like that? And if so, how are you getting those commercial artists?
Well, I mean, I think all of our inboxes are flooded with, attention from artists in different areas who are finding clever and nimble ways to offer production services. And there are countries that aren't on lockdown. They're reaching out, going, "Hey, in Sweden, we're doing full-on shoots. We don't have no social distancing. We're good. We can do whatever you need." And for us, it's we haven't done any offshore production yet, but as FCB, we have a big network with a lot of really great in-house production facilities in other offices around the world. So we've been doing a lot more work with all our in-house teams in Toronto and Chicago and South Africa. But again, it's like a combination of the other folks are saying. It's a combination of what we've been able to do is use a lot of existing assets that our clients have from previous shoots and kind of find new uses for them and rehash them to tell new stories. Again, animation, motion graphics, a little bit of stock. For me, I think the biggest challenge right now is everybody's work looks exactly the same, right? Everybody's doing the same sort of UGC-ish, thankful to the healthcare frontline, loving families in their front yards, and you see a lot of the same stock footage, the same looking UGC, because we have these constraints. I heard Margaret talk about for Panera doing a campaign with the drivers. Just yesterday we were talking about how are we going to show the Clorox is still getting bleach to the front lines? What if we have the truck drivers? So we're all thinking in that space. And I think as a creative and as somebody whose responsibility is to make sure that the clients don't waste their media money, the trick is to figure out how to do something that doesn't look exactly like what everybody else is doing right now. And so all that imagery that everybody's tapping into looks the same, but is still kind of changing a little bit every 2 weeks. I think the challenge is going to be to stay in front of that and do something that'll stand out in that sea of sameness.
That's a really interesting point.
Can I chime in with a question, Heidi?
Please.
Do you guys think that these new ways that we're learning to produce and these new tools that you're using, for the audience that's listening, I wonder if they're curious if you think that will continue, right? Like you put phones in the hands of the drivers and, whatever the next thing that we think out of, your clients might not have gotten to that originally, or not originally, but if this didn't exist. As we move forward, do you think these new channels of producing that we're opening up will stick around?
I do. I mean, I think for sure, I think the biggest thing is that we're realizing that so much more can be done virtually than we thought, like feedback given over phones. I think we're going to see a lot more shoots that agency people and clients don't have to attend because we're learning that we're able to work really well not being in the same place. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that, and clients are going to ask for a lot of cost savings, saying, "Oh, well, we saw you. We didn't have to pay for 3 creatives and 2 agency people to go to that shoot because you did it over the phone." So I think we're going to be asked for a lot of those savings going forward as well.
Tommy, I see you smiling. Are you wanting to add something to that?
Well, I think what's changed for us is that the speed of how we're expected to turn work around right now in this environment has been absolutely breakneck. And obviously it's, everybody's in reactive mode. So we have never had the turnaround deadlines like this before. And so my fear is that might be something that is going to stick with the clients, that they're going to be expecting ideas, in 18 hours and to see it on screen 18 hours later. I do think that they have probably fallen in love with the production budgets that they're seeing, the at-home production budgets, which is a little bit disconcerting. And but I think to Karen's point earlier, if this is something that turns out to be sustainable and the future of the industry, I think anything that is probably going to go the way of the buffalo is travel budgets.
Mhm.
And the expectation that we can do a lot more with a lot less in a fraction of the amount of time. And I just can't help but think we've been doing so much social work and producing for social that I think clients are going to put much more emphasis on social media influencers, UGC, and putting a lot more media and emphasis on that. And it's just a completely different style of production. And so I kind of feel like that's going to be, it's always kind of been going that way, but I think that that type of work is really going to be accelerated in the future.
So let me ask another question. From the production end of things, we're having a lot of conversations about what that remote experience could look like, right? Photographers, videographers who are going to be asked to create this content and then stream it remotely or collaborate remotely. And one big question is, what does collaboration look like then, right? We used to have these big robust sets with everybody there collaborating at the same time. I'm assuming that the sets will be smaller and there'll be less people. We'll be able to create less in a day because of that. But the biggest thing I think that people are wondering what would look like is the idea of collaboration remotely. How are you all finding that right now?
I mean, I feel like in the future, you'll do it a lot like we're doing it now. So, let's say there's a shoot. We just did a big BMW shoot in Kiev. Well, we probably won't be sending 6 people from the agency to Kiev anymore. Maybe, it's a much smaller team. They do a shoot in the morning, then a bigger group like gathers on Zoom and you look at those takes and then give feedback and, if it's not right, reshoot. But
It's not
the days of everyone going, to Tommy's point, to those big shoots is not happening. I don't think anytime in the near future.
We
I had a-
actually,
I-
go ahead.
No, please, Justin. I just had a clarifying question and maybe you can answer it. I don't mean to be daft, but what is UGC? Several of you have said that and I'm not familiar with that term.
User-generated content. So like anything that's
Thank you.
online from people who've made it themselves, essentially.
Thank
But so, yeah, of course. So we basically, we've kind of done a version of this before. We had a shoot in Toronto, and because we are very small, we had a shoot in Toronto and a shoot in Vancouver almost simultaneously. So we could not all be at both locations at both times. And so we ended up doing, and I don't enjoy doing this, but we ended up doing like callbacks remotely through Zoom. And this is pre-COVID-geddon. We did, we did the callbacks during that. We basically shaved our time a lot. Normally we would be there a couple days ahead of time. We'd be there for the tech scout. We'd be there maybe a day afterwards or two. And we really kind of just, jumped in and jumped out when we all needed to be there. So a lot of it is kind of this. It's everybody getting on a Zoom call or Google Hangout and just chatting about, some of the details that we normally would all do in person. And I, back in the day, when I was at 72, I mean, we would send so many people to shoots. Like it was on our team, like, 7, 8, 9, 10 people plus would go to these shoots. And you're like, I can't imagine that's going to be happening from here on out. Just purely from not even from a health perspective, but like as Tommy was saying, clients are definitely getting used to like, oh, wait a minute. So you don't need all 7 people to be there. Like, let's just have the 3 people to show up, and just from a budget perspective.
Can we explore a little bit what one of you mentioned, I'm sorry, which one, about the budgets and how they're enjoying the smaller budgets? Because the conversations on our end are, some things won't be less expensive. Some shoots might take longer. you know, you can't shoot as many talent in the same day, so shoot might have to be extended over a number of days. What are the conversations that you're having with your clients, or maybe not yet, because we don't really know what the future of production is going to exactly look like, but what are their expectations now, and what are the, you know, besides the travel parts, what are the other parts that are of the budget that's changing that they're paying attention to?
Well, I can jump in on that. I think that production budgets, it's a real eye-opener when you hear a client say that media is working dollars and production is non-working dollars. And it's really heartbreaking as somebody that, you know, really values storytelling and production values, to hear a client say that. But that's just how they see production. They see it commoditized. And so there's already that perception that you're fighting against, and then you add cost consultants on top of that. And I've, you know, in the past 3 years, I think cost consultants have just gotten much more aggressive in challenging agencies to bring their production budgets into a fraction of what they were 5 to 10 years ago. So at Mechanism, that's really, that's forced us to do a lot more production overseas. We shoot quite a bit in South Africa just so that we can, you know, take an idea and bring it to life as best we can with the money that we've been given. And, you know, I used to be a director and would just get so frustrated with agencies and how the budgets have just gone down and down and down. But it's really more a function of, you know, of cost consultants, and cost consultants make their money by bringing in production, you know, at a fraction of, you know, really what it should be. So I think that's a trend that is going to be accelerated as a result of what we're going through right now.
Do you guys agree? Everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, it varies from client to client, but more that they're bringing them in more and more. I think to kind of where the question started was also, I think it's effective. And I don't know if that'll probably change when we come out of this. But right now, we're obviously in a period where we're concepting for, like in the past, when we were presenting ideas to clients, we might just present the idea and not in the same breath talk about how we would make it. Because now when we're presenting ideas, we're also presenting, and this one is easier to make because of X, or this one is faster to make because of Y, you know, because there's such an urgency to get stuff out there now while it's relevant, because the message news cycle is changing so quickly. So I think there's in some ways almost more collaboration with the clients on how ideas, not just in their purest form, but also what it'll take to get them made.
So what do you think people in the production industry can do now to prepare for the future? That might be a big question.
Well, I think number one thing in this virtual world where we're all going to be shooting, like, you know, giving feedback on Zoom and phones, is whoever has the best data plan wins. Because the most frustrating thing is when we're trying to give feedback and the thing freezes, and, you know, so start there.
How about security? Is that an issue?
Haven't come up for me yet.
No, it hasn't really in our world either. One thing we've been doing that has been really inspiring and helpful is having reps like do Zoom meetings like these and show us what, you know, their photographers or their directors can pull off during this time. And so if it's, you know, maybe they are somewhere in Europe where, you know, they don't have the rules that we have right now, and they're able to shoot things that are visually different than what we're able to pull off here. And that's just so inspiring and helpful and good to know. And without them coming to us with that information, we have no way of knowing. So I would say for, you know, reps of, you know, photographers and shooters, it's just really helpful for creatives to know what they can actually do.
So I have a question. Steve writes, because fewer people will be on shoots, will you be relying more on creatives, photographers, video team talents? So the artists' talents, because less and less people will potentially be on set in the future. I think I said that correctly. I'm going to throw that to Justin.
Yes, I mean, we kind of already do that. I think right now is like anybody who's like a multifaceted, has a lot of different skill sets and can help us be a collaborator, from a creative perspective, is going to be, is definitely more valuable than someone who's just like takes feedback and then just needs more feedback to know what to do next. And I think everyone's kind of evolving that way already. Like I've seen that with some of the partners we've had that are like video shooter pairs, like a DP shooter. And then same thing with animators and things like that. I would just follow up on the last question though. I think like if I were a photographer right now or an illustrator or any kind of creative human being who's trying to like be on the other side of the agency and say, hey, listen, pick me. What Karen said, and what we've all said, Margaret, everybody, Tommy, is like, if you're doing stuff that doesn't look like what's happening right now, like that's fantastic, and keep doing that, and just like really invest in yourself to show us stuff that's very different, because it is. I mean, it's gotten to the point where there's a great parody video that's going around right now, like on LinkedIn and all those places of like just like the stock footage and like I'm a brand and all that stuff. I don't know if you've seen it, but like the problem is it's like so easy to do, and that's because that's what we have. That's the tools that we have currently. But if you are somebody who's out there who can come up with a really interesting new format to create something, this is the time to like break it out. So
Yeah.
We've only been at it for a month, right? Sorry, Karen.
yeah.
What?
I said we've only been at it for a month. Can you imagine what we're gonna be doing?
Yeah, and I think to build on that, if you think about after previous recessions, I think there's in terms of messaging, there's first sort of a rush to talk about what matters in life. So so first you go through a phase where all the clients want to talk about family and values and what really the true meaning of life, and family and values on your bucket list. So being proactive now for the artist to be nimble and think, how are the ways that I can show all those kinds of thoughts, not in the traditional way, not just with like the close-up faces and the sort of Getty way of doing that. And then I remember in the last two crises, what we saw after that was first you had this rush to like safety, emotional, the meaning of life, hunker down with my family messages. So how do you show that? And there's going to be a desire for that for sure for the next 6 months. So how do you do that in a way that doesn't look like exactly what you imagine, and a little bit like what that parody video Justin was referring to? And then after that came humor. After that was like, there was this desire, this desperate desire for things that are funny, to lighten things up. And I think some of the funniest work that happened in our industry happened around 2011-ish, like a couple of years after the 2008 crash. It was like we were all dying for humor again. So thinking ahead of those things and like being ahead of it and start playing and making, like Justin said, inspiring investing in yourself and thinking of how are some of the ways that you can bring that to life and be ahead of the curve and be in front of agencies with ways to do that, I think would be a good idea.
Good advice.
Well, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, if I were to give a piece of advice to photographers or directors, I would say put a lot more focus and importance on your treatments and trying to present your treatments in a face-to-face manner, like on Zoom. So take advantage of what's happening now, because I think if we're going to start to work more remotely, we're going to need to trust the vision of that photographer or that director even more. And also, I think that there's going to be elevated importance put on previs and trying to bring your vision for that project to life in a much, much more tangible way, probably than most directors are accustomed to. And I've worked a lot with, a good example is, I think a lot of visual effects houses, are really good at this and obviously have the in-house talent to be able to pull it off. But whenever you're doing a visual effects project, they will go that extra mile to really bring it to life and put some CG into the treatment and motion tests and things like that. So I think being able to build the trust that you understand the tone, you understand the brand, and that you may be working remotely or with a scaled back team, and so that's going to put the onus much more on the director, on the photographer, or any artist to try to bring that project to life, way before it's awarded. And it would just give us the creatives on the other side, just that sense of security, as well as our clients, that they can bring it to life and do a great job of it with a smaller team.
I want to stay on this, sort of future, what's going to be coming thought process. And I know that you guys you're serving your brands now in this way that makes sense for them, but are you also planning, campaigns and things for 3 months from now, or any of that kind of long-term planning? And the secondary to that question being, are your buyers, talking to the artists, and are you asking for these treatments? So I'd love to go to Margaret, because I feel like I want to spend more time with you, Margaret. I wanted to hear some more of what you had to say. So I'd love to start with you, but I'd really like everybody's opinion on this if we could. So Margaret?
Well, I think I'll use Pepsi as an example. One of the things that we're trying our best to do is come up with a plan and then come up with a contingency plan. So, with Pepsi, the NFL is one of their big relationships. And right now they're saying that, we're going to be playing football in the fall. Now, how they're going to be playing football is a whole, another story. So are they going to be playing with a stadium full of fans? Maybe. Are they going to be playing with no fans in the audience? Maybe. Is it going to be completely called off? Probably. So it's kind of coming at each assignment or project from all these different angles and making sure that you have a plan in place for each of those, and a plan that you can actually pull off, which is where we'll look to our creative production partners to help us figure that stuff out. So I think also just a lot of collaboration on assignments is going to be really important in the next few weeks, kind of working together on how to create a production with your partners, bringing them in much earlier than probably we ever would before. So usually you probably wouldn't reach out to your production partners until an assignment is completely approved. I think it would be super beneficial and helpful to have those partnerships
Established.
Start much earlier. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
So do you think those partnerships will be ones that you already have and trust and know, or will you still be willing to reach out to new people to try new things? Especially if they're different, I suppose.
I think everybody's open to new partnerships. I mean, you'll always rely on people that you've had success with, in the past. But I think we're, to Karen's point, we're all looking for ways to differentiate from everything you're seeing in social or on television. So
you have a plan A, which is what's happening this minute, then a plan B and a plan C. You are for every client that you have.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Because you just don't know how it's going to unfold,
I think that's brilliant. I mean, it's why I asked the question. So Tommy, do you also, is that how you're thinking as well?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, again, it kind of goes back to really, knowing and understanding and embracing the brand's inherent purpose. And as long as you can keep that purpose intact and their voice and their tone, it really comes down to the idea. And, how we pick and choose artists, I think is really dependent on, what the idea is. And so we're totally open to, working with anybody. I think, it's who can plus it out and who can nudge it to, to take a good idea to a great idea. And that's really kind of how we award all of our projects. And in terms of planning for our clients, I think to Margaret's point, I've just never dealt with so much uncertainty in my career. And I think the one thing that you can be certain on is it's going to change, and nobody can predict the future. And but as long as you can keep that brand experience and what the consumer wants from that brand and expects from that brand, as long as you can keep that intact, you can come up with ideas and executions that, you know, are perfect for a 6 foot apart world, or when their, you know, togetherness comes back. But I think it's always going to be, you know, inherently dependent on the idea, how great that idea is, and is that idea the best expression of a brand.
Justin, could you weigh in too?
Yeah, I mean, we're having the same kind of experience here. You know, it is very uncertain. We're not entirely sure if there'll even be, you know, if this client will be around in the next few months, you know, and like, for example, I was just at StubHub. I was embedded there for 6 months back in the summer, and that brand, you know, is entirely dependent upon live events and people going to live events. And so right now that's not happening anytime soon. And so kind of the best thing we can do is help those clients figure out other ways to stay relevant and other ways to kind of adjust their brand and even kind of evolve as a brand as a whole to, and that's not marketing. That's not marketing or advertising. That's just like, what should we do as a company? But as far as working with people, I mean, we're open to working with everybody. You don't have to be someone that we've worked with in the past, or in fact, I think it's great because you can depend on those folks, and, you know, and you already have a consistent working style. But you know, back to kind of what Karen was saying and Margaret and everybody's been saying, is the more kind of the fresher the idea, the better. And right now specifically, this is a good time.
So I want to tweak this question for you, Karen, a little bit. I know, you know, oftentimes, and then a lot of people in our audience, you know, their first person that they reach out to is your buyers, right? Are those people, are those, and I'm not expecting you to have, you know, buyer answers, but I would love to know, like, are your buyers actively looking for people to collaborate in these capacities? Are you like, how are you managing that element of your team?
I sure hope they are. They better be.
No, I think that's fair, right? But
yeah,
it is a big question for our audience. Do
you think the question is, are people wondering if they should reach out, or
yeah, I think there's a huge everybody wants to be respectful. Nobody wants to be tone deaf. Should they continue to market during this time towards these brands? And I think some people are saying, hey, like you said, I have an inbox filled with, yes, I can do this stuff remotely. But I'm just wondering if the idea of planning for these shoots in the future, and is marketing towards your buyers appropriate, or is there something that they should know about that?
Yes, I would say, I think it needs to be nimble, and just like what our clients are having to do in the way that they talk to their audience, I think photographers and illustrators need to do now and understand that it's changed. They can't just like send out an old email about, oh, I can shoot beautiful mothers and babies, or like, I think the two things we're particularly interested in, and the themes that are coming up from everybody, is how are you able to create something? How are you now able to, have you adapted your production style to accommodate for what we're living through right now? So how can you do things differently, more nimbly, virtually, 6 feet apart, whatever? And then also show me something that isn't exactly what everybody else is doing. But so I think
that's really good advice.
Yeah, so I think those two things, like, you know, those would be the two things. Show me something so don't just market your old stuff. You know, make a bunch of new stuff that is relevant to what we're living through right now, and be in front of us with ways to message. I mean, a lot of our clients are all trying to say the same thing, right? So how do you find ways to say that look or sound or feel different, that will stand out and make the client's media money go farther? And how are you able to assure me that you can make it with the limitations we're going through right now?
I think that the key to what you just said too is like that's what we're doing. Like all the agencies are constantly trying to figure out how are we evolving, and we're changing, and we're not doing what we used to do. So like I think that's what we expect from vendors as well. Is like, hey, we've adapted as well, and we see what's going on, and we're here to do something new and fresh too. So.
And I would add to that the photographers and illustrators or people who are wondering about how to market in the very beginning, they were so concerned because was it appropriate, right? Should I even reach out? Now we're 4, 5, 6 weeks in a lot of places, and consistently I'm hearing from people that I'm reaching out to, oh my gosh, thank you, that's such a good solution, or oh, thank you, I needed that. So reaching out in a relevant way to provide you all with the tools that you need is very appropriate. Filling your inbox up with things that aren't going to be helpful because it's just the same old stuff, it's probably better to go spend your time creating something new that might be of interest in the future. Because you're now creating and trying to be inspired by things now for something that you may or may not create in the future. 3 different variations of some sort of option. But I think that's really an important message too.
And I'd like to just add on to that. When you're sending an email to anybody, it should always be solution-based, or you should always be having something to say. That's not unique to this time frame at all. The questions of what solutions you have, those have changed. What you want to say, those have changed. But you should always be reaching out to anybody, the buyers or whatever, with solutions or something to say. That is the basis of everybody's marketing, I think, including everybody's brands, right? I really want to lean into this one question because it came in, and I'm not exactly sure who it came from, but do you have a feel for the emotion of future visuals will be? I love this question, and I think, Karin, you were the one who sort of was leaning into this, like that cyclical thing that has been happening. But I'd love to hear everybody's opinion on that question. Can I start with Margaret? You're just at this side of my screen, so I'm always starting with Margaret.
I think like Karin kind of hit on it. Like we kind of had phase 1, and now we are starting to see the beginning of phase 2. So I feel like just visually things are getting a little more hopeful, a little lighter, a little more optimistic, and brands are kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel where they can actually kind of show their personality of their brand again. So I'm hopeful that that's where we're heading now.
Tommy?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would say that there's definitely, people are craving optimism, and I think that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We've had campaigns where there's a lot of togetherness in the campaigns, and it just still doesn't quite feel right. It still feels like that doesn't really look like I'd like to be in that moment. So optimism,
even when
yes.
like Good News Daily came out, it was such a breath of fresh air. I think everyone was like, right. Yes, something hopeful and different. So you can see there's an appetite for that.
Justin, would you want to add in on that?
100%. I mean, everybody here's nailed it. It's like the first phase of this is like, it's kind of the obligatory, you have to acknowledge what's going on in the world and talk about how serious it is. But fairly quickly after that, people are craving positivity, right? And optimism. And that, so if you look at what's happening online, like in the social sphere, like a lot of the popular videos are all these things that are like much more uplifting or funny, just like just how people are dealing with this at home. And that's, we're all sitting around in our houses, and sure, it's great. And I would say on the silver lining component of this, like we have never been more prepared for something like this than as a society than we are today, like being able to do this. But people still need like fun, cool shit to look at, it's like, and to be entertained. So
I do think too, there's room for, and I had this conversation with someone yesterday, the idea of healing too. Like we're not just going to open up the doors and come out and everyone be okay. There's so many people that are having a very different journey than other people. So I think there's probably going to have to be some thought around that too.
I think
I
that's
mean,
really,
just simply people are having more time to think.
Yeah.
So
I'm personally obsessed with dog videos. I don't know where everybody else is at. Puppies, that's all I want to look at, puppies and kittens. But I know I'm not alone. And on this outline that I wrote for you, I wrote silver linings. Obviously, Justin sort of just tapped into it. It is silver linings. What are the silver linings that are happening right now? And before you all answer that, how will clients' needs shift? And where are the new opportunities? I think that that's what you guys are talking about, like your plan Bs and Cs for all of your clients. But how do you think those needs are going? Where do you think the new opportunities are going to be? I know that sounds super vague, though. When I had it in my head, it was so much more clear.
I'll just say one thing that I've noticed and I've watched throughout the years is like, we use this term brand affinity all the time within organization, like within the agency. And it's like how much people love brands and love brands. And for me, this is probably the first time I've actually really genuinely felt that way about a brand or two. And I've seen some brands do things that like, use their power for good. I've seen like Airbnb do things like giving healthcare staff, places to stay, or, Xfinity making all the hotspots for free, or like even if something is simple for my kids, like they made ABC Mouse, which I've seen the ads for years. I'm like, I don't even know what ABC Mouse is. And then suddenly, ABC Mouse makes their learning program for free. And these are like huge financial endeavors for these companies to take on, but they're doing it for the greater good. And for me, that coming out of this, I'm like, shit, I really like all those brands a lot now, like way more than I ever would have liked them for any ad they've ever done in the past. And so I think there's an opportunity for brands to kind of, to just brand citizenship, to take a bigger play and a bigger role from here on out a little bit. I'm hoping that'll happen. We'll see.
That is a great phrase, brand citizenship. That's a great phrase.
I didn't make that up, just FYI.
Oh, okay. But I was
He stole it from someone else.
It's been 72 and Sunny had that. And,
I was super
steal
impressed. Oh, you've wrecked it all for me.
Sorry.
Karin, do you want to add in on that for me?
well, I was actually just going to say that where the opportunity lies for artists who are looking for work, I think, is how do you help tell those stories? Because we are looking for brands to act and not just talk at me. So maybe that doesn't look like an ad. Maybe that doesn't look like, the kinds of stuff we're used to seeing. And how can artists think of how to bring some of those acts and those stories to life? I think that's something proactive that I would start thinking about as somebody who wants to be relevant in this new world. The other thing that I do think is going to happen, and it plays to what Tommy was saying a little bit, is we're certainly seeing a huge concern that when things open up, production people won't be available. Like there's going to be such a deluge of work that all the agencies and clients are going to be competing for the photographers and shooters and videographers and directors and production companies to such an extent, because there's such a backlog of work that needs to be made, that we're not going to be able to make stuff because nobody's going to be available.
Well, I actually had a question, because when you had said you were hearing from countries around the world and places that don't have the same restrictions as we do here in terms of being sort of ethical, good citizens right now. Does that do the brands know that, or feel like they have a moral responsibility not to partake until it really truly is safe? And how do we know when it really truly is safe? Like that's such a juxtaposition.
I don't think that it's necessary. I think a lot of it is countries that are coming out on the other side because they were more responsible than the United States has been, quite frankly.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So I think it's more the other way around.
Okay.
But again, in terms of practical advice for this audience, I do think that again, we've talked about a lot of different ways to be relevant and helpful and market yourself in what's coming. And so I think we've heard things about what is the kind of imagery that we're going to be needing that's going to stand out? How can you show us that you can pull it off? To Tommy's point, previs and treatments. How can you get me the trust that you're going to be able to pull it off? And then I think being ahead of it, once the door opens up, I think we're going to see a floodgate open, and then being first and being able to quickly turn around that treatment and quickly come to that solution, so that you're literally the one that gets picked as people are, and because there's such a pent-up hunger to make stuff.
So nimble is the word of the day.
I think so. Nimble and thinking ahead to something that looks different than, because everything looks the same.
Yeah. So anybody else want to weigh in with any advice for this specific audience? And then I'll go to my silver linings. I'm going to say that forever, but silver linings. Anybody else had any more advice about for the people who are listening today? I think you guys covered it, and Karin, you just very much wrapped it in a nice bow. But if Margaret, if you had anything to add, or Tommy or Justin, here's the time.
I can jump in. I think the types of the artists that I love to work with are really hands-on, and they can do it all. And so I love working with director DP because that level of collaboration is so tight, and even sort of the one-person show that can DP, direct, a little photography, do a little bit of editing, do a little bit of After Effects. Those are the type of people that I think are going to be really, really high in demand, again, because the production budgets are just going to get smaller, and the speed to market is closing. So fast, collaborative, the ability to think on your feet and do a little bit of everything with a smaller, lighter crew, I think is going to be really critical.
Fair enough. So I'm going to move on to my silver linings part. And I think this question could be professionally and personally, however, which way you would like to answer it. I'd love to start with Karin. What are your silver linings of this whole sort of mishigas, I suppose, is a good way to say it?
It's going to sound incredibly cliche. I think gratitude. I think, it starts personally, that I feel grateful that I live. I feel grateful that I like my roommates. I feel grateful that I'm still in love with my husband after 30 years, that my kids that are home, I like them. We're not fighting too much. I feel grateful that I live in an area of the country that has beautiful light, because beautiful light and the way light changes what things looks like gives me joy. I feel grateful that I'm living in a city where I can get outside and be in nature. And that then extends to how we're working. I am finding myself so grateful for the connections I'm making on screen with people like you all right now. And I'm getting much more emotionally attached to all the people I work with, because they are our connection with the outside. So I think I'm becoming much more grateful for people and collaboration. And when you're able to collaborate in a way that we first thought that you have to be in person, and now finding that we're able to collaborate in this way and have connections in this way, I find myself kind of starting over and going back to just being grateful for relationships and collaboration and people.
I think that is perfect and not at all cliche. I feel the same way. Justin, would you maybe weigh in on, what is your silver lining in all of this?
Yeah, I think other than, I always say to my wife, and I said this a little earlier, is, we really have not been better prepared for this in our entire lifetime and time frame. 15, 20 years ago, this would be much more difficult to do any of this. Like, we wouldn't be able to even continue working probably in the capacity we are now. I also think there's just a resurgence of creativity. I'm really, every day I'm like, this is so awesome that people get a chance. You never get a chance to actually spend time at home and with your families and actually look at, maybe investigate a hobby that you've always wanted to do, or even something like master classes. And it's really, I think there's going to be a an explosion of creativity, like, and really great ideas coming from all over the place, just because of the fact that we have not a lot, but we have time on our hands, and we're going to get through it. I mean, this is not the really good news here is this is not like Ebola or some crazy thing that is just wiping out half the population, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, we've got, like, you know, it's pretty cool. Like, we have movie nights every night with our kids, and so, or not, once a week or so. So it's been great. Like, that part's great. But I'm really looking forward to getting back into a room with actual human beings that aren't my family. So.
Tommy, could you weigh in on your silver linings?
Yeah, there's a lot for me. I think one, just personally, not having to step on a plane has been amazing, which is also, you know, the benefits to the environment have been pretty amazing. I think borders have dropped, which has been something that's pretty amazing. Also, I think the elevating the importance of healthcare in our country, I think is we've sort of seen a cracks in the system, and hopefully there's going to be greater emphasis on everybody having access to amazing healthcare. And then I think the final thing is just this idea of collectivism, and it's I think America is sort of founded on this idea of rugged individualism, and it's you know, we've had to put ourselves to the side for a second and really sort of focus on greater good, and that's really something that this country is accustomed to. And I think red states, blue states, we're all in this together. So that's kind of where I go with it.
Margaret? I think that is, by the way,
Beautifully
100%.
said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
amazing.
Love
I
it.
mean, I think everyone's hit it. For me personally, you know, I was one of the ones who was flying from San Francisco to New York once a week. So I'm thankful that I'm not doing that now, and I am pretty confident that I will not be doing that in the future. Just taking a break from that has made me realize how unnecessary it is, and how expensive it is, and how we can do things remotely so much more efficiently and effectively. Creatively, I have found that this has been such a godsend. It's been like a time when we're like touring museums that we've never had an opportunity to tour, but we're always on our bucket list, or travel to countries that we've never gotten to and see virtually. So that part of it has been, you know, we're reading, we're like out in our neighborhoods and talking to our neighbors, you know, from across the street that maybe we've never even talked to before. So it's been a time of inspiration for me in that way. And I believe really a pause that the industry needed.
Heather, I was just going to ask if you'd like to add anything else. I feel like we're in the wrap it up portion.
Yeah, and I can be quick. I've said it before, but I really think we were operating at a level that was not sustainable culturally, professionally, personally. I know I was feeling it. It was just go, go, go all the time. Having this pause button has been really nice to recognize this moment of shared humanity on a global level. We're all literally going through the same thing at the same time. And I'm working really hard to, and my family and the people I surround myself with, to just really like reflect for a moment on who our next best person is in each one of those situations. So I'm grateful for all the opportunities to connect with people to help figure out what that is.
I'm also in the same mode with all of you. I'm happier for the planet. I'm happier for my time with my family. I'm scared for the people who are affected directly for this, and it scares me all the time. But for the most part, I'm trying, we're all afraid right now. And I think when you're afraid, you can do one of two things. You can lean into being the guy who hoards all the toilet paper, or you can lean into your kindnesses. And I think that, I think every one of you, just the way you just described everything, is you're all leaning into your kindnesses. And those are the people that I love. And so my only one of my biggest silver linings is that I get to interact with people like you and get to know Heather better and so on. So that's my little silver lining, that and my puppy. And so thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Yeah, thank you.
I want to tell you that I got several texts, because sometimes my clients text me during this, but one of the things that kept coming up was, this is the best panel yet. Now, all of our panels have been fabulous, but I think that you guys were amazing today, and I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you
thanks.
for your
All
time.
right.
You know it's valuable. Enjoy your weekend, everyone.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Take
Get
care.
rid of the other sweats.
Yes.